Hey guys, all right, so I cleared out and cleaned up my charcoal drawer. So I just wanted to go through and kind of show you guys some of my favorite tools, a little bit about how I use them. First one is the General's charcoal powder. I use this a lot for fill-ins or for toning paper. I definitely like to use toned paper more than white, so an easy thing for me if I do end up having to use like a white paper for clients, I'll just fill in this and I can use a lot of like reductive drawing techniques, which is great. My second all-star is this AFMAT pencil sharpener. I have arthritis and sharpening, especially charcoal pencils, can be really difficult for me. For any of my soft ones, I still do need to use an X-Acto knife, but for anything that's hard or medium, and I'll show you with one of these guys that isn't super sharp. It has two different sizes. Let's do the small one. And then this one gives you a really long. So sharp as fuck. I really like that. You can do a lot more fine detail with it. And for me, it's just a really easy thing to kind of take the work out and save my hands and my wrists. Beautiful. All right, so into the box we go. Probably my most used item in here is Vine charcoal. So this one is super old. I got it from an estate sale for like $1, but it is still great. There's a bunch of different sizes. Typically for drawings when I'm first starting, just to kind of get the basic structure, I will use Vine because it erases so easily. There's no marks left, especially if I'm using like a white paper or wood, it lifts off really, really easy. And then for fill-ins and block-ins, it's one of my favorites. It mixes really well, it blends really well, and it lifts super easy. Next thing in here, so this is like my little box of pencils and stuff. From left to right, I have erasers, white, charcoal. Then I have my general pencils. I try to organize it from like hard, medium to soft. And then I have other brands. So I will have Pitt, there's some Primos in here. I have my extender for when my pencils get really, really small. Nitram, I also have an extender wand, which again, it just kind of lets you step farther back from your work, which I think is always really, really good. You can get caught up in details too much, and this really makes you focus on the overall composition. I've got my Nitram sticks here, a bunch of different sizes and different hardness. I started with pencil, which I do have over here and still use sometimes. I hate the glare from pencils, which is why I switched over to charcoal. What I like the best about Nitram is that for me, it seems the most similar to a pencil's basically consistency. With pencil, there's no issue with the lead being weird. You're always going to get a consistent flow, and it's really easy to build up and layer. With charcoal, some of them I found with the wax binders, like in the generals, I've had some issues. With the Nitram, I think, again, it's just very similar to pencil in the accuracy and the detail that you can get from it. So, big fan. Over here, got the chamois. I've got brushes. If I'm blending, I usually use like a bristly brush, hog, or a synthetic, something like that. Just kind of a bigger painter one if I am trying to blend in bigger pieces. I also have like a round one too if I need more of a fluffy, soft edge. Some backup Nitram. My pencils are a mix of Kimberly, Faber-Castell. I've got some Blackwing. And then I also really like this graphite that has no wood. It goes great in my pencil sharpener, and for, again, filling in and blocking in, it just works really well for me. I've got my X-Acto, so for my pencils that are soft or extra soft, they cannot go in a sharpener, and they will need to go the more traditional route of actually, let's see here, having to, this can get so dirty, do this slow process of carving it down, being really careful, and then once you get a lot of the wood exposed and you have a lot more of the charcoal, you would go in with a sandpaper like this to get it sharp. For ones that I've exposed like a lot, let's try to find one like this. If I feel like the tip is getting too flat, then again, I can just come in here and from the side come in to sharpen it. I got my collection of erasers over here. So I've got Factus, a bunch of different ones. Honestly, I really just use kneaded erasers and then my collection of Tombows. I typically just use the smaller one. I do have the flat tip, the chisel tip. For bigger pieces, I'll use that, but typically if it's a smaller detail, we're gonna use these round ones. So that's pretty much it for in here. I do have a giant nitrum stick that I love for pieces that are bigger, kind of like the vine charcoal for kind of blocking in the structure and doing fill-ins. I would use this. And then papers. Like I said, I really enjoy working on a tomes paper just because the middle ground is already there. It just kind of makes it easier for me. But I'm a big fan of Strathmore. I like their toned paper. I typically get this mixed blue one. And I actually bought a 18 by 24 pad and I just cut them down to the 9 by 12s because it is way cheaper than buying those pads. And then pastel paper. And then the wood, like I showed earlier. These are pretty much the main surfaces that I use to draw on. And then in the next video that I make, I'm gonna go over all the different types of charcoal on the different papers and how you can get different effects with them.